It must be the worst time in the world to be a Barcelona hate watcher. This team is very, very serious. Last season, Girona gave Barcelona a real run for their money in the race to become the top team in Catalonia. They put 8 goals past Barcelona home and away and made Xavi look like a bit of a fool. Unlucky for Girona, they have a new challenger to deal with this time around. Hansi Flick has turned this Barcelona team into something fierce in a remarkably short amount of time. Maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. This team is very talented and they definitely underperformed at times last season. And just remember that Barca are doing so well without Ronald Araujo, Gavi or Frenkie de Jong in the squad as of yet. It's been an interesting past week or so for Barcelona. Reminders of previous ineptitude came in the form of news that they have just completed paying off the full 145 million euros to Borussia Dortmund for the purchase of Ousmane Dembele in 2017, a man that left Barcelona a year ago. Knowing what we know now, maybe it would have worked out better for Barca if they just played a 10-year-old Lamine Yamal in place of Dembele back then. Heck, throw Pau Cubarsí in there too. Why not? But by the way, I did not cross-check Spain's child labor laws when making this, so take what you will from that information. Anyway, Barcelona are back. How scared should we all be? Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. So I spent the last 2 weeks or so over the international break working on that Barcelona video that released last week on their very, very many infamous presidents. Unfortunately for me, I started working on it the literal day of their 7-0 win against Valladolid, which made me question the timing of the release, but we did it anyway. Also, I always forget that Pedri actually comes from Las Palmas and not La Masia, so that's my mistake. Things are looking good for Barcelona right now. Joan Laporta has been accused of being more of a politician than anything else in the past, but we do have to give credit where credit is due. It really does look like he knows what he's doing. And he has a history of making it look that way too. As of last week, we got the news that Barcelona's salary cap has more than doubled from 204 million to 426 million in 1 year. As we know, in the past they've struggled to sign and then register players in La Liga due to the strict financial regulations in there. Every team is given a salary cap that's assigned to them by La Liga, and this is based on your incoming funds. As we know, for Barcelona, they've struggled in that department somewhat recently. But now, because of the wizardry of the Barcelona accounting team, that issue's slowly being resolved. I don't know how much of an effect this is going to have for Barcelona in the immediate future. I'm talking, for example, the registering of both Dani Olmo and Christensen later on in the season when both are fit. If both are fit at the same time. Because, I'm not sure if this will actually be a major issue after all. Damn. Who could have possibly seen this coming? Definitely not anyone that's even remotely paid attention to this man's injury record. Olmo comes in, scores twice in as many games, then has to sit out the next couple of weeks at minimum. The circle continues. Onto a more positive note and the real difference makers in this team. This is a Barcelona side that looked a little lost at times over the last season. Hansi Flick has come through and completely revitalized them, becoming the first manager to be sacked and, not stepping down or resigning on his own accord, quote unquote, in the history of the role. Must not have felt great. 12 wins in 25 matches was just inexcusable to a lot of people. A group stage exit in the 2022 World Cup after losing to Japan, as well as a loss in a friendly over a year later, also against Japan, were equally as inexcusable. Although at this point, I think a lot of people have probably come to the realization that Flick wasn't entirely at fault for the entirety of all of those shortcomings. Yep, he had his part to play in there, but Germany was kind of doomed for a lot of reasons. A lot of locker room reasons, a lot of higher up reasons. Even further, that last stint made so many people forget that he left a sextuple winning Bayern Munich to coach for his country. If Barcelona go on to win a lot with him, headlines will read, "Former treble-winning Flick guides Barcelona to glory." If he doesn't, then it's failed ex-German boss disappoints again. It is what it is. The media will do its thing. As we know, pretty much the only major starting position-worthy addition to this squad has been Dani Olmo. They're both not new per se, as they're both academy products, but as the year goes on, we will see more of Marc Casado and Marc Bernal, both very calm, not overly flashy players. There is a lot to be hopeful about this midfield going into the future. Maybe maybe Barcelona were right in not going for a defensive midfielder in the most recent window, like a lot of people said that they should have. I was one of those people, and I still think that they'll need to, especially going forward when they get into those more crunch time games, because they're certainly good enough to do so and get into those positions. They're gonna need some cooler heads, but anyway, what do I know? Also, we're not there yet. Maybe we should just enjoy the moment as we see it. They look remarkably unlike what we've been used to over the more recent past. They are far less risk averse in terms of their distribution and the way they go hunting down the ball. We'll touch on that in a little bit. Flick means for the transition between each line to go as rapidly as possible. Something made easy when you have a defensive line that can all turn, release, and stretch wide. Just check out Cubarsi's assist for Rafinha's opener against Valladolid. There is so much more directness that I've noticed. And what's more direct than long balls all the way from the back? Ter Stegen attempts these passes and gets on the ball to look for them far more than I'm used to. In all of their games so far this season, we've seen them go straight through the hearts of teams with urgency. And while there are very many examples from all of their 5 games so far in the year, I only really want to talk about a couple of the moments from the Girona game because it's the freshest in my mind. Girona are currently not as strong as they were last season. They've lost 5 of their best players: Jan Cuoto, Eric Garcia, Savinho, Alex Garcia, and Artem Dovbyk, among many more, all of whom were solid starters last season. They still have a fantastic coach and fantastic players, but they'll likely struggle this season, especially if we want to compare them to last season. They're not going to repeat the heroics, I don't think. There's not really any doubts about that. But going back to Barcelona, that doesn't take too much or anything really away from them in terms of how masterful their performance was. It was really hard worked, and they nullified all of Girona's strengths. So let's talk about the goals. We keep talking about Yamal, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record at this point, but this is just something that needs to be said over and over again. It's not just his raw talent, it's the decision making, it's the fact that he's able to tap into a flow state regardless of where he is on the pitch, whether he's in attack or defense. He was already looking extremely confident in the early moments of the game before he got that first goal, but in the lead up to that goal, that's where he showed the real tenacity and everything that sets him apart from so many world-class elite players. He works hard in hunting down the ball as Girona try to play it out from the back and swipes it away from David Lopez. Then in a situation over here where we have a much more senior Robert Lewandowski, who, if this were Bayern Munich, let's be honest, or if this were any other Barcelona player probably, the ball is being fed straight to him to finish it off. But now we're in a situation where most of us trust and believe that a 17-year-old is more than capable of finishing off these chances. I think there were very, very few people, if any, that were cursing at the fact that he didn't square it over here. What on earth was Girona trying to do? It's some great pressing by Yamal, but how was he allowed to cover that much distance from the right flank in order to make that mistake happen? And then, moments later, a ball is set loose on the edge of the box after a Rafinha free kick. Who else but Yamal latches onto it? He's not the strongest in the air from what I've seen at least, so there's no use in competing for these kinds of balls in this kind of situation. And then, the placement of the ball, curling it around Blind as his shield to the keeper to give Barca a 2-goal cushion. It was just good stuff. I remember watching both of Barca's losses to Girona last season, and something that really stood out in both games was their ability to just play through Barcelona at ease, especially with the use of their centre-halves, Blind and Lopez, who both have the passing range of midfielders. These were not fluke wins. Girona was better. This time around, they just couldn't really do it, and I would say that Barcelona's press becoming a lot more focused had a lot to do with it. Not only Yamal but also Rafinha were very disciplined and deliberate in not giving any of those players in the back line for Girona any time to progress the ball. And like I said a couple times, this was pretty much the same Barcelona team from last year, bar Olmo, Cubarsi, and 1 or 2 others. And if I remember correctly, the 4-2 loss that Barca suffered against Girona in the second half of that year was the loss that really put into motion the sacking of Xavi. Rafinha is looking like potentially the most improved Barcelona player this season too. He's always been a hard worker for Barca. This stretches back to his time with Leeds too, but with a hat-trick in his last game against Valladolid and more great performances, he's adding output. It's also probably no coincidence that this great stretch in play for Barcelona in 3-4 years has come at a time when Pedri has been fit consistently for the first time in 3 or 4 years. There was no one on that pitch that carried the ball more confident than him. There was no one on that pitch that I believe recovered the ball more than him too. And then his goal was just a thing of absolute beauty. Casado picks him out with the sort of pass you'd expect from a prime Barcelona, and he just rounds the keeper with ease. Sources say that this rejuvenated Pedri is a result of him being assigned a more rigorous training technique focused on practical strength to prevent injury. It sounds like common sense, right? It's exactly my thoughts too. I mean, surely an organization the size and stature of Barcelona would have had medical and wellness staff on payroll that would have been able to identify the need for this kind of training regimen a lot earlier on. Listen, I know headlines aren't always true and we should always take them with a grain of salt, but if this is true in the slightest, I can see why Barcelona had so many issues. After the departure of Sergio Roberto, this is the first Barcelona team to not include any players that played under Pep Guardiola. Going even further, Marc-Andre ter Stegen is the last remaining player from the treble-winning team under Luis Enrique in 2015. Ter Stegen is also the new captain of the squad, making him the first player to be named the main captain of Barcelona that has not been a La Masia product since 2003. Not exactly a surprise, as he acted as captain on a couple of occasions as Sergio Roberto was on the sidelines last season. What I'm trying to say is that this is a transition season for Barcelona, and they're transitioning remarkably well. The De Jong situation still seems complicated, as always. He's one of Barcelona's top earners, thanks to him agreeing to defer his wages back in COVID times. The chickens have finally come home to roost, and now Barcelona are apparently on the hook for a reported 20 million euros per season until 2026. I highly doubt that he's going to waive that money. Nobody should if they signed a contract that entitled them to it. Barcelona have publicly made it clear that they would be open to selling him too in the past, more than once. And because of that, I think most of us are assuming them to attempt to either get him a new contract on significantly reduced wages or try to sell him off again. Complicated situation, but De Jong is not in the wrong here. Bartomeu's aura is huge. They're still feeling its effects to this very day. Real Madrid legend. I cannot wait for El Clasico at the end of October. It's going to be really interesting to see if Real Madrid pick up their form by this point too. They haven't exactly gotten up and running just yet. There look to be some adjustment issues, but I'm pretty sure they'll find a way to make it work. And there we have it. Let me know what you guys think about Barcelona. I love making these videos about team single performances and trajectories somewhat as they progress in the season. Just a reminder that this channel is sponsored by Orlafly. For all your eSIM or eSIM top-up needs, you can click the link in the description to get 5% off using code FootballIconic. That's all for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.